Accessing secure channel. The Agent Files, where aspiring agents rise and masters flourish. Powered by Agent Builder Coaching. Mission initiated. File loading.
Hi there, this is Peter Fan for Agent Builder Coaching and the Agent Files. This week we're tackling a subject that is a whole lot more important than most people give it credit. And you might be a little surprised about that. Superpower, what kind of, I mean, we're not people with capes and we don't fly around and any of that stuff. But there is something very, very underestimated that can become and will become a huge difference maker if you apply it properly. And the superpower is not some sort of magic thing, pill, insect bite. It's not made in movies, but it is real. And being able to identifying and leveraging it is very, very important. So again, welcome back to the Agent Files. This particular interpretation of the superpower is for those that are ready to get into real estate or have just submitted their paperwork to get their license out, so they've started to make moves. And it's a really good and important time to take real inventory as to who you want to be in real estate. And that sounds a bit odd because you are what you are, but as a business person, you inevitably are going to represent yourself, your business business models, your values, your beliefs, your principles. And part of that also is your superpower. And in a nutshell, to me, and other people have different interpretations on it, but to me it means is, how do you connect? Right? How do you connect with people? How do they respond to you? And if you can somehow connect with them on their level, on their needs, wants, and have clear understanding what that means and how you can best add value to their life, that would be a superpower, right? And I'm going to illustrate it with a story in a little bit further. You may have heard the story before because I may have used it in another recording as well, but we'll get to it when we get to it, so to speak. So here is a very good definition. Your uniqueness, right? Your uniqueness is your competitive advantage. If you learn how to use it, right? Your uniqueness is your competitive advantage if you learn how to use it. And it is a very, very important and very significant identifier for what can make you stand out. And why it matters is pretty obvious, right? In any marketplace, I live and operate, and you've heard me say this before, I live and operate in Greater Victoria on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, Canada, if you didn't know what that was. In our marketplace, at any given point in time, there's somewhere between 1,250 and 1,600 real estate agents, supporting, assisting upwards to about 400,000 people thereabouts. It's a little shy than that, and sometimes a little more, but we are a growing population. So, okay, say 400,000 people. That's, not a lot of general population for a lot of realtors, i.e. we're somewhat overpopulated. And why do I say that? Well, it's hard to stand out in the crowd if you do what everybody else is doing, if you say what everybody is saying, and if you look like everybody's looking. Right? That doesn't mean that you have to act, operate, look different. No, you just need to connect to the people that are important to you in a way that makes you stand out to your target audience, to your sphere of influence, to your people. And it's a very important priority, particularly now. When you start in the business, it is so easy to focus all of your attention on stuff that makes you kind of blend in rather than makes you stand out. And I'm not suggesting to go goofy or weird or salesy no. Actually, I couldn't be further from the truth. In seeking your differentiation today, right? And I'd be tempted to say always, if you really look after the people that you want to service and on their level and at their clock, you're going to make a difference, right? Where particularly now, where just about any customer service department you phone is some sort of an AI generated thing. Or if you go online and you look for some support, it is a chat bot, right? It's not a real person unless you have gone through I don't know how many iterations of that same bot on different departments. So you standing out and reaching out personally to your target audience will make you stand out. So that by itself is a difference maker, right? So the other part to realize, and a lot of people don't realize that this until they actually are in the real estate business, is that consumers do not choose the brokerage. They choose the agent. They choose you. They are after that relationship with you, right? Or with whomever else that they might select on. But obviously, your superpower is your ability to connect to the individual consumer that is thinking about buying or selling or investing or relocating or doing some form of real estate transaction. Right? So leveraging that strength, that connection, can make a huge difference. And I'm going to give you some examples in a moment, but I want to just set the foundations for a moment here so that we are really on the same path here. Now, so don't overthink it, right? Um, Being different and being special means being a good communicator and being a really good listener, right? My mom always used to say, you were given two ears and one mouth, and you should communicate in that proportion. Listen twice as much as you speak, right? Uh, and I never got it when I was a kid. Now that I'm much older, I actually get it. I actually do understand that part now. And I catch myself from time to time and say, hang on, don't jump in. Let the consumer say what they need to say. Let them, express their concerns, their wishes, their wants. And that approach alone, just to be willing to listen, is is a very significant differentiator in the marketplace. So be a real connector and relationship builder. Uh, you know, a a teacher that I worked with many, many years ago always used to say, you don't need to know it all. You don't need to have it all. You don't need to be it all. You just know where to find it. And know where to find it oftentimes means know how to make the connections between what a consumer wants or needs and the sources that you connect them to in order to make that happen. Right? So you don't need to know it all, but if you can make the connections, that makes you a very, very valuable person and a differentiator. Right? Being a skilled marketer or storyteller is, of course, important. If you can tell really good stories that make sense, that have relevance and context in wherever it is that you are, so that the consumer kind of embraces and understands and really kind of personifies themselves with what is going on there, that really leaves a very memorable impression, of course. Okay. And yes, you need to be a problem solver, right? If you're part of the problem, the consumer is not seeing that as a superpower, right? We are there to resolve the issues. And this is actually a relatively big issue. We sometimes over the years, we've seen it on many occasions, particularly as a managing broker, is that I get phone calls from realtors saying, "Oh, this other realtor is blah 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 whatever," right? And the realtors are having a hissy fit and have completely forgotten why they're there, which is allow the buyer to buy and the seller to sell. Everything else, right, As long as they follow the rules and do things properly, everything else has nothing to do with them. Right? Their egos, their personalities, their flavor of the month, their favorites, their whatever, their due process doesn't necessarily matter, right? Unless it starts impeding on the transaction itself, allowing the buyer to buy and the seller to sell. Right? So, are we adding to the solution, or are we taking away from the solution? Well, we need to be adding to the solution. We need to solve people's challenges and problems. And I've said this before, but it's at this time that you're getting ready to get into real estate business. Keep in mind why people buy and sell real estate. It is rarely about the real estate. Right? It's typically about resolving some challenge in people's lives. Sometimes they're really positive and exciting challenges, like getting married, having a child, having a promotion, positive things that happen in people's life that you transition people through. But very commonly, of course, it's also that they're not so pleasant situations. A divorce, a separation, a death in the family, layoffs, health concerns, all kinds of relatively stressful situations that people need to live through, and the real estate is just one component of that transition in people's lives. And if we are this problem solver in those situations, I mean, not only does it really help them, it also makes you feel very, very rewarded with being able to be part of that. And yes, you also get paid for it, but you get paid for being able to solve that problem, right? So recognizing that as a real superpower is a really important part of getting yourself in the right frame of mind in the business. So how do you identify your superpower? It's actually easier than you think, right? What do people compliment you on? Man, you're a really good storyteller, or man, you really know how to solve problems, or you bring people together, or very important ways that you can recognize that, oh, hey, this I'm onto something, right? When do you personally feel most confident? Right? And let me give you an example of this. If you are absolutely getting crazy nervous about speaking in public, why would you go and force yourself to be speaking in public? And if you're better one-on-one, then that may be part of your superpower. You don't need to convince 1,000 people. You need to convince, 2, 3, 4, 5 people a month to seek you out as their realtor of choice. And that can very well be a very satisfying and very rewarding career if you do that. What skills come naturally to you? Right? Are you a good storyteller? Are you a good presenter? Are you uh, somebody that's really good at showing properties, or somebody that's really good at making presentations in public or in private? And where do you consistently add value? Now, I'm also going to add one here because I think it's actually one of these kind of forgotten superpowers that people kind of ignore. I mean, we all come with legacy, with a history, right? And so dive into that history and look at yourself and say, what connects me with people in my past? Is it a sport? Is it a hobby? Is it a cultural thing? Is it, a language? Is it? I want to stay away from politics and religion, but it can be a connector as well, right? If you have, um, a sphere of influence that involves your religion or your politics, in context, that can definitely become a superpower. You want to be very, very careful there because that can also become a very distinct distractor, right? So I'm not saying be on the fence about your politics or about your religion, but you know, there is a reason why people always kind of talk about if you don't know somebody, don't touch on politics or religion, because it tends to become very polarizing. And in places that can be okay, in places it may not be, right? But if you are an absolute advocate about something and you want to stand for that, and it is your cause, then so be it, right? Then but you need to be confident and feel strong enough internally that that also serves you as a business person. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that you're a hypocrite if you kind of separate those things. That's not what I mean here at all. It is you are going to position yourself in a marketplace, and consistency makes sense, right? You don't want to say one thing and actually be something entirely different. And I'm going to illustrate it a little bit with a story that was told to me by actually the founder of the company that I'm with right now. Um, and I have used this story before, so if you've heard it before, then I'm sorry that I repeat it. But we're at a discussion, and there's some new realtors standing around. So this is exactly at the time and place where you may be at, or a little bit just before you really enter into the marketplace. But this agent had just entered the marketplace and had a conversation with the founder of the company. Said, "Hey, I'm struggling with really finding my mojo in the business. I just don't know what I need to do to kind of find my identity, right? What find my place, my space, how I can really relate and connect with people." And the founder of the company happens to be called Glenn Sanford. And so Glenn said to this newer agent, "Well, what do you do now, and how do you do things?" And then he said, "Well, I like doing open houses, and I like connecting with people there, but it seems to all kind of peter out. I mean, we do good, we connect with people, we get phone numbers, we get contact information, but for some reason or other, people are not really staying loyal with me. They go to the next open house and then they do their thing." So Glenn said, "Okay, so that's interesting, and that's a very common occurrence." And he explained why, and I'll tell you in a nutshell why that is. But because many people that attend open houses are very early on in their buying or selling thought process, so they're not just looking for houses; they're also actually selecting agents. Right, that's part of that process of attending at open houses. So the incubation time from a person attending an open house to actually buying a house is quite long. It's anywhere between 3 to 6 to sometimes even 9 months, and I've had people come back to me a year later. Okay, so it can take a long time. That's just because in that early stage, people are kind of window shopping. They're looking for houses, but they're also looking for locations, schools, employment, and yes, they're also considering which realtor they're going to use, because that's one good way to find a person that you can connect with. So anyway, so Glenn said to this agent, "Well, tell me more about you and what you are passionate about." And said, "Well, if real estate was not an option and money was not really a concern to you, what would you be spending time on? What would you be so passionate about that you wanted to get involved and stay involved with it?" And the new agent eyes lit right up, and he said, "Well, I'd be a chef cook." And so Glenn said, "Well, why do you say that?" Well, and the agent responded, "Well, I was a chef cook, and I loved it, absolutely loved it, and I would do it if I could now. But because of all the chemicals that are used in commercial kitchens, I have a real problem with allergies, and I just can't be there for my health. I can cook, for fun and pleasure, and but I can't be in a commercial environment. It's just too, it, it complicates my immune system too much, and I get all kinds of health concerns. So Glenn then said, well, that's a very interesting passion that you have, and suggested to this agent, how about if you found a way to connect your passion for cooking to real estate? If you could find a way to do that, right? Think about what you would do in order to make that happen. And the agent said, well, thank you very much. That's a great idea. I'm going to really think about that, because that makes sense, because I would have fun doing something like that. And I think it would make sense for the consumers as well. So a few weeks go by, and this is how Glenn continued to tell the story. He reconnected with his agent, and the agent was over the moon. He was just absolutely just flying on energy and excitement at a level that was hard to, contain. And so Glenn said, well, what did you do? All right, what's going on? You're all excited. You're doing great. What did you do? What did you find as a way to set yourself apart? And the agent said, well, I took your suggestion to heart, and I really sat down and started thinking about how I can connect cooking with real estate. And the way I've come to implement this is that now I don't do open houses, but I happen to be doing cooking events at a property that happens to be for sale. So what he does now, in the practical sense, he sets up his open house about an hour and a half before the actual open house. He goes into the house, gets obviously permission from the sellers, and starts preparing little appetizers, little bite-sized bits. In France, they call them petit fours. I think that's at least the name that I remember from living in the Netherlands. But they're just charcuterie boards, I suppose, is what you would connect it to nowadays here. So little teasers, right? And he prepares them in the kitchen of where he's doing the open house. Why? Because now the whole kitchen starts to take on the aroma, the wonderful smells and the flavors and the textures and the colors of, a real kitchen, a lived-in space. Nothing sterile, nothing over the top, disorganized either. And he now focuses on making these foods. He brings in other agents that actually do the touring, and he stays in and around the kitchen, because once people are in the kitchen, he shares, of course, the food and what have you, and people start talking, right? Now, a number of things started to happen almost immediately. The first open houses, people just didn't want to leave, right? They just enjoyed the food, but also the whole ambience, the whole setting, the whole environment. It was no longer an open house, right? They were visiting a home. It's a very significant difference in perception. So people started to sit down, right? Which rarely happens at an open house. When you experience a home completely differently when you actually sit down. So that's another lesson for you if you do open houses. Get people to sit down, right? Why? Because then they slow down and they start looking around and actually taking in the home much better. It's just a real psychological thing. The other thing that has started to happen is that people started to follow his open houses because they wanted to be part of this. They wanted to, get the free food. Yes, I get that, but also they wanted to just be part of that ambience. So you had no difficulty whatsoever to get names, numbers, contact information, and people started to phone him now, saying, "Hey, come list my house, and will you be doing your cooking event at my open houses?" Right. So there it was. In a very short period of time, this agent went from how the heck am I gonna separate myself in the marketplace to being a totally unique approach to how to brand and market themselves in the marketplace. And now he literally has to bring two or three people to help him with the open houses, to tour the homes and to do flyers and brochures and take names and numbers. And he's doing phenomenally well, right? So one little thing is that little identifier, that little separator from everybody else in the market. So what comes naturally? What are you good at? What sets you apart? What are you passionate about? So one key question that you could add here is, if money didn't matter, what would you be spending time on will oftentimes identify your true passion, your true calling. And if you can somehow connect that to your real estate business in some way, shape, or form, then you're very much on track on identifying and be able to establish what your superpower is and how to maybe utilize it in your business. Okay? So how you align that then is, become a strong communicator with focusing on that network that connects to your passion. Right? If I don't know, if you love playing chess, start organizing chess in the high schools as a educational thing. Sponsor events around it, and it really doesn't matter what your passion is. It really doesn't matter what your passion is, because it's your passion. As long as it connects somewhat to a community, to a sphere of influence, okay, and then being able to connect that back into how you operate your business, perfectly fine. Um, me personally, I have always used this one model of, if I could show you without a shadow of a doubt that I can make you financially independent in the next 5 years, would that be worth a cup of coffee? And it's a model that we've used on many occasions in many marketplaces that still applies today and is still possible today. It just takes more due diligence and more effort and a commitment, right? Because if you wanted to be financially independent in 5 years, you would have to have some solid backing and a real commitment, to make this happen, because it's straightforward, but it's not easy to truly be committed to it. Okay. Anyway, so align. And by the way, why do I say this? Because I align quite well with people that have an affinity for financial independence through real estate. Right. That makes sense to me. Creating financial independence is not all that hard, if you know what steps to take. All right. I hope all of this makes sense. So the other parts, of course, you need to be good at what you do, right? Now, when you're just starting out in real estate, one of the scariest parts of that is that there's so much coming at you in such a short period of time that it becomes completely overwhelming. And so when we initially talked about your business plan, and it's a few episodes back now, but dig that out. What does your business plan say? What does that look like? What is it? And if you haven't completed that, well, maybe it's a good time to take that step back. You have no reason at this point in time not to spend a little bit of time on your business plan. It's an important piece. You're going to be in business, right? So being prepared what that business plan says, what you want it to say, what it represents, should include, your business model, right, as to how you're actually going to accomplish your goals, right? It's cute to say what your goals are, but it's more important to say how you're going to accomplish them. Well, using your superpower and aligning that with your business objectives becomes a very straightforward, very direct connection between your goals and how you're going to achieve them, because it comes 9 out of 10 cases, it will come through your superpower, how you connect with people, right? So if your connection with people is 100% social, then so be it. I didn't say social media because I don't think that that's quite a connector that people think it is. It's good for profile, but it doesn't actually, in many cases, does not actually generate business. It connects people and it generates conversations. And that's a good thing, but I don't honestly think that just because somebody is a friend with you on social media, that generates a business relationship. There's got to be other stuff to it. And you can certainly use it as a support system to run your business, but it is not the same as you having a true relationship with somebody professionally. Okay? Then, of course, understanding the details of the business becomes important, but it only becomes important when it is important. Now, that sounds weird. I mean, or logical or silly, but it's real. So many agents make the mistake that they try to learn everything that there is to know about the business, and they don't need any of it until it becomes relevant. Right? You don't need to know how the office processes the paperwork because you have no paperwork to send them. Right? And guess what? By the time that, even if you had taken all the classes about how to process paperwork, by the time that you actually have the paperwork, guess what? You'll have to take the training again because you will have long forgotten it. Not because it will take so much time. No, because there's 1,000 other things that will have taken your time, effort, and energy. So by the time that transaction paperwork management becomes important, you're going to refresh that anyways. Okay. So focus on what is important, right? And your business plan ought to be telling you that. And your superpower can help you move you in that right direction. I hope all of this makes sense. Okay. Now, learning how to present whatever it is, whatever your model is, whatever your relationship building tools kind of give you, understand that there's a real need to be able to present that. Right? Not always from your perspective. And as a matter of fact, in many cases, you will use exactly what the consumer needs in order to articulate how you're going to support their needs. Right? Again, I hope I'm making sense here. So here's the exercise for you. This is your homework for this session. List 3 personal strengths. What are your strengths? Right? And if you don't know what they are, then ask your friends, your colleagues, your peers, your spouse, your children, your parents, right? And ask them specifically, what do you think I'm good at? What do you think I'm about me when you think about me? What comes to mind that, hey, I'm phoning John because he's great at accounting, or it's fixing the fence, or it's just a good listener, or whatever that may be, list it, right? And then write a short statement. My superpower is, and I will use it in real estate by doing this, that, or whatever. Right? If you go back to the story I told about the agent that kind of rediscovered his passion for cooking and now is satisfying that passion, and he's making sense with it in the context of his business, right? He found that connection. In fact, Glenn Sanford, as a side story, the person that actually had the conversation with the agent, his superpower when he was personally in real estate, selling real estate, was that as one of the first people to ever do this, he started to create videos of houses that he toured. And he did that for buyers. Right? So he would walk through a neighborhood and walk through a house and then would say, hey, if you are looking for a home to purchase now he was in Vancouver, in Vancouver area in his early days in real estate. So he would, if you are looking for a home in Kitsilano, see, I've looked at these homes, but if you want to see the inside of a home and want me to do a walking tour for you, I'd gladly do it. Give me a call at. And for that reason alone, he stood out to the point that he was closing, internet inquiries at a much higher rate than anybody else. Right now, he was running paid advertising to promote all of that, so he was spending money on it. But the average conversion on a click pay per click type ad in online advertising is somewhere around 1 to 2%. That's a reasonable to be expected click through rate. He was getting 10%, 12%. So the responses on his approach, his superpower, was very dramatic. Now, why did he do that? Well, because he liked doing videos and he's comfortable with that, and he was and still is a tech guy, right? So he was an early adopter of video technology and recognized that that was going to be a differentiator, as AI is now a differentiator, and so on and so forth, right? So, what is your superpower, right? And how will you use it in real estate? You make that decision. So your superpower is your unique edge, right? What makes you stand out? In Vancouver, Greater Vancouver, between the Fraser Valley and the Vancouver Real Estate Board, there is somewhere around, 20 some odd thousand real estate agents. 20,000. How are you going to stand out? If you're in a community where there is, 50,000 people that live there and there's 100 realtors, how are you going to stand out? How will you become the preferred realtor to your target audience in that community? And that takes time, and it's also takes you having something that makes you memorable. And your superpower is a support system to becoming memorable. Okay? How do you build confidence and authenticity? By focusing on your strengths, right? How do you do that? Well, one step at a time, right? Look in the mirror. How authentic am I in what I do, what I say, what I represent, right? Because if you're talking inconsistently, if you're acting inconsistently with how you brand and market yourself, people are going to recognize that. Right? People are going to see that quite quickly, and that is not necessarily a good thing. In a future session, we're going to talk a lot more about lead generation and all that kind of stuff. But one of the key parts of any kind of success in real estate is trust, right? And trust comes from being genuine, comes from being sincere, being honest, being ethical, being professional. It's a whole combination of things. But your authenticity is therefore a real component of building those relationships that ultimately, lead to referrals, repeat business, and future business with the people in your sphere of influence, your target audience. Okay, so align your superpower with your big why and your business plan, and it will make a huge, huge beneficial difference to how you're going through your career in real estate. As you're preparing and getting ready and setting yourself up to launch yourself into the business, that's actually a pretty big decision as to how you're going to do that. Right? It's not something that 5 years later you want to go back and say, well, gee, let me kind of add a little bit of a superpower to this. You can, but what happened with the previous years? How did you set yourself apart then? And you're making it harder on yourself than absolutely necessary. Okay, so take some time, take a step back, and figure out how your superpower can help you not only, establish yourself in the business, but make your business more sustainable by strengthening the relationships that people already connect to you for. Right? That's actually a big eye opener in many people's, when they realize that, hey, if it is really about relationships and connecting with people that are somewhat similar to me, then it's not so much work. It is really connecting and continuing conversations that I would otherwise have with those people anyways. And yeah, real estate may come up. And if it doesn't, that's perfectly fine. There's still good relationships, right? Very important. Hope that makes sense. So, there's a couple of action items here. Write your superpower statement and tinker with it. Toss it out. If you don't like what it says, if it doesn't represent you, if it doesn't feel like you, that's okay. Then share it with an accountability partner. You know, whether that is your spouse, your kids, your parents, your close friends, your trusted allies, people that you know, like, and trust, and are honest enough to tell you whether it is nonsense or really good, or it needs work, or it needs tinkering. Right? If you want to toss it by us, by all means, we're certainly more than willing to do so. And then brainstorm the 3 ways of how to apply it in the future. Where can you put it in? Where does it make sense? Right? Really not that complicated. So, and then revisit it as you build your business, as your skills evolve, as to how you can up the ante, make it more significant, make it more of a primary role in your persona, your profile. May even become part of your logo or your business slogan, or you name it. Right? Take it wherever you feel is the right thing to do, and in context with your values, your principles, your core values, but your passion. Right? It's a pretty important thing. Now, there's a couple of books that you can read. Now, Discover Your Strength by Marcus Buckingham. The Strength Finder 2.0 by Tom Rath. Really quite a good book. And then The One Thing by Gary Keller. And Gary and I go way back. Gary is the founder of Keller Williams, and I've got a lot of respect for him. This One Thing book is much more than just about your superpower. It is really also about really being good to yourself, and not get yourself too caught up with all of the challenges and all the divisions and all of the grab your attention type activities that basically distract you from your thing, right? But whatever your thing is, and the one thing becomes, I guess, your thing ultimately. I hope you enjoyed this session. It's one that, like I said from the outset, that a lot of people kind of underestimate how important it is. But just think about the people that you know in any kind of business and what makes them stand out in that business. That typically it's not because they have the biggest billboards. Right? It's typically because they made a difference somewhere that makes them stand out. And so what are those differentiators, and what can you learn about them? So again, hope you enjoyed this session. Please come back for the next session, and we're going to talk about some exciting other business aspects as you get started in the business of real estate. And looking forward to talking to you in one way or another. And otherwise, have a fantastic week, and talk to you soon. All the best.
File saved. The Agent Files. For more missions, agents' tools, and tactical strategies, subscribe and follow the Agent Files, powered by Agent Builder Coaching. Until next time, stay sharp. Your next mission awaits.